What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So I did want to do a quick video today going over the buoy smashing. I would say a lot of players most likely already know how to do these, but it's most likely going to be more of like a beginner's type of thing if you haven't done them before, or at least I would say a lot of players are probably going to be new to them, mainly because the summit recently just finally had a buoy smashing in it. So I would almost guarantee that we are most likely going to be seeing these a lot more often in the future summits as well. So at least if you are ready with a good set but also know exactly how to do them, you will most likely get an insanely high score much easier than before. Now I do want to mention though, I'm also going to be running a buoy smashing a few different times here to show you how important a score breaker set is. Now if you are wondering though, I'm going to be running a random set like this one for my first run. And then after that, I'm also going to run the buoy smashing with a full score breaker set with 70% boost on it. Not only that though, I will also be using the lovely legend points on skilled as well, which by the way, it's not going to be a full 10% from the testing I have done, but at least it is going to give you a slight increase in most of the feats. Now spawning outside though, I'm also going to be running the exact same Proto WR1 for both of these runs. I'm also not going to have a score breaker active on this one. For some odd reason, by the way, being in like the hood view seems to be a bit easier for the buoy smashing. Now for the Pearl Harbor though, do keep in mind many of them are going to have like a set path you can take on them. That is most likely going to tremendously help your overall score. Now if you go right through these said buoys, it is going to give you a higher score in them. Keep in mind as well, I also noticed this when doing a lot of these in the past, you do not have to be insanely quick to get a very high score on them. In fact, in some areas, you probably want to go very slow, that way you can hit most of them, and at least be able to get the highest score and the combo by going through like all of the big ones here. I would say this is probably going to be one of the most important things about the buoy smashing, is the fact that you are aiming for the higher comboed ones, that way you can stack points a bit easier and it is most likely going to make these a lot better when doing the summits to go after the highest score possible. Now one thing I did notice about this though that I would say is going to be slightly frustrating as well, without a score breaker set you're not going to have a very high score on these. Keep in mind even with a lower scored set, I guess you could say even like random go parts on your vehicle, with the 40% skilled stat on the legend points, and then of course also maybe having like some of the parts having the skilled stat on them, is probably going to give you the best chance to have the highest score possible. Now I would say doing these though, you're most likely going to want to focus on being slow but also technical. And this is one of the reasons why I love the WR1 because it's not only going to be smaller, it's going to be a lot easier to turn in many tight spaces. Now moving over to my second run, I'm now going to be running the exact same boat having a score breaker set active. It really is going to be insane to me how many points you actually can get from this, and it's most likely going to make your life that much easier if they do show up in a summit. Now one thing I have to admit though is if you guys are not running a score breaker, you can still easily get into platinum and most likely get a fairly high score without one. But if you do have a score breaker, you're not going to have to work nearly as hard to get a higher score, and you're most likely going to find these to be almost like a walk in the park. Now I would say a lot of people do know this, but do keep in mind if you are running into these small red buoys you see around like these, they are actually going to take your score down and your combo, which if you are wondering, you also have a 4.0 combo when maxed out. If you run into the red buoys, they are going to take your combo all the way down, and if you ended up doing that, you're most likely going to hurt your run, but one of the best things about doing the buoy smashing though is you do not have to be perfect on them. And for most of these, if you are getting like 50 to 80,000 points, you're probably good to go. But if you are running something like a score breaker, getting 100,000 points is insane. For example, in that recent summit, I was also not doing that great. I was definitely not trying in that one. I still managed to get around like 80,000 points on it. And I was still doing pretty dang bad in that. So if you are running a score breaker, it kind of gives you like a leeway to not be perfect. Which I do have to admit, by the way, having a score breaker set active on a buoy smash does make them like so much easier than before. Now, one thing I did want to mention, by the way, just in case you might have been wondering, like, what is the best way I can get a high score if I do not have a score breaker set? For the power boats, I would recommend having skilled on every single go part you have. That way, at least you have like a higher booster on it. And on top of that, also throw on your legend points to skilled, making it a little bit higher than before. That way, I would say, guys, you can easily get a pretty dang high score in a summit. even though you're most likely not going to get like 150,000 plus points, you are most likely going to get fairly close, at least not having it at all. Overall, though, I have to admit, at least the buoy smashing isn't going to be nearly as bad as like a bullseye. Those I really do feel like had a lot of mixed opinions on them. If you are struggling with them, though, I did end up doing a video not too long ago to get you the highest score possible, and basically an entire breakdown on how to do them.